We leave Cairo and fly to Amman, the capital of Jordan, then fly on to Aqaba, where our Jordanian adventure begins. Jordan is located where Africa meets Asia. Long before Jordan became Jordan, it was on the trade routes, bringing the riches of Asia and Africa to Europe. Its strategic location meant that it was where empires met and battles were fought, from the Egyptians, the Hittites, the Assyrians, the Romans, the Crusaders, and the Ottomans, and more. Our guide Jobber gave us a history lesson at every stop, but to help simplify the story, I thought I'd try to condense all this history into one very abridged section before we launched into our Jordanian adventure. Another important thing to understand is that Jordan is mostly desert, with most of the arable land and population concentrated in a narrow strip of land along the Jordanian Rift Valley. Now to the history. People have lived in what is now Jordan from the Stone Age. Artifacts like these statues survived from the Neolithic period, 8,000 years ago. During the Iron Age, about 2,800 years ago, kingdoms emerged along the coast of the Mediterranean to the Jordanian Rift Valley. In 720 BCE, Israel and Daram Damascus were conquered by the Assyrians, and in 701, Ammon, Edom, and Moab became vassals of the Assyrians. In 627, after the Assyrian Empire disintegrated, the Babylonians stepped in to rule the area. Between 550 and 486 BCE, under Cyrus and Darius, the Achaemenid Persians conquered most of the Middle East, Egypt, Central Asia, and as far east as the Indus Valley in Pakistan. Alexander the Great conquered the Persian Empire in 332. On his death in 323 BCE, the empire was split among his generals. The green area was disputed between the Ptolemies based in Egypt and the Seleucids based in Syria. The Seleucids eventually took the land in 200 BCE. Meanwhile, the Nabatean tribe managed to establish an independent kingdom in southern Jordan and the Hejaz in 169 BCE. By 63 BCE, the Roman general Pompey had conquered the Levant, starting 400 years of Roman rule. In 106 CE, Emperor Trajan annexed the Nabatean kingdom unopposed. In 114 and 15, he conquered Armenia and Mesopotamia. In 324 CE, the Roman Empire split, and the Eastern Roman Empire, later known as the Byzantine Empire, continued to control the region until 636. Beginning in 632, the Middle East was ruled by a succession of Arab caliphates until 1517. The Seljuk Empire rose out of Central Asia and ruled the region from 1037 to 1194. Between 1095 and 1291, European armies invaded the Levant on a series of crusades to free the Christian Holy Lands from Muslim control. And along the way, they conquered cities and formed their own kingdoms. By 1298, they were all back under Muslim control. Antioch fell in 1098, Edessa in 1144, Jerusalem in 1187, and Tripoli held out until 1289. In 1517, the Ottoman Sultan Selim I defeated the Mamluks and assumed the title of Caliph over what gradually became the Ottoman Empire. Having sided with the Germans in World War I, the Ottoman Empire territories were divided into spheres of influence at the end of the war, but Palestine was still a problem left outside the spheres of influence. In the Balfour Declaration of 1917, the British declared their support for a homeland for Jewish people in Palestine. In 1922, the League of Nations gave the British a mandate to oversee Palestine. This led to a flood of Jewish immigration. Revolts against the colonial powers broke out across the region. 1919 to 23, the Turkish War of Independence. 1920, Iraqi Revolt. 1925, the Great Syrian Revolt. 1936 to 39, Palestinian Arab Revolt. That led to a wave of new countries being formed. The Emirate of Transjordan, the Kingdom of Iraq, the Republic of Turkey, the Republic of Lebanon, the Republic of Syria, and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Most had to wait until after World War II for true independence. Israel gained independence in 1948 without a solution to what has become the Palestinian problem. The First Palestinian War began in 1948 when Egyptian, Jordanian, Syrian, and Iraqi forces entered Israeli territory. Jordan took control of the West Bank. Egypt took control of the Gaza Strip. But Israel took control of most of the Arab areas defined in the UN mandate. In the Six-Day War of 1967, Israel launched a ground offensive into Egypt's Sinai Peninsula. By the sixth day of the conflict, Israel occupied the entire Sinai Peninsula and the Gaza Strip, Syria's Golan Heights, and the Jordanian-annexed West Bank. Around 300,000 Palestinians fled the West Bank, and 100,000 Syrians were displaced from the Golan Heights. After the 1973 Yom Kippur War, it became clear that the issues would not be solved with guns, and a peace process needed to begin. But talking has borne little fruit. There was the 1973 Camp David Accords, the 1993 Oslo Accords, and many more. But the violence of October 7, 2023, and the Israeli response in Gaza make it obvious that there's a long way to go. So much for the history lesson. Now for something completely different. Our Jordanian adventure begins in Aqaba. Aqaba is the only port in Jordan at the extreme southern point of the country, on the Red Sea. Its population is about 200,000. The busy port accommodates containerized cargo and raw materials exports of potash and gypsum. During our short stay in Aqaba, we have two activities: birding at the Aqaba Bird Observatory and snorkeling in the Red Sea. Birds are a little shy today. We hear more than we see. We'd hoped to see some migratory birds, but we're a little too early. But we do manage to photograph a few resident birds in the scrub woodland. And we find some new butterflies. And a huge hornet. Then we turned our attention to the flora. These melons are native to this region. These papaya-like fruits contain a toxic, milky sap. Eventually, we find our way out of the scrub woodland. The observatory is a repurposed wastewater treatment plant. Now the settlement ponds host a variety of waterfowl and shorebirds. There are even some juvenile flamingos that seem to have lost their way. Our next stop is the Berenice Beach Club, one of the many resorts that line the Red Sea. We board a glass-bottom boat to explore the reef. The coral reef is right off the shore. No need to go very far. After looking at the reef through the glass bottom of the boat, I'm into the water to see if I can find something to take pictures of. I can see why the Red Sea is a prime destination for scuba divers and snorkelers. And here just offshore, the coral is in great shape. And there are plenty of brightly colored tropical fish. A little hazy today, but that's Israel on the other side of the Gulf. You can also see Egypt and Saudi Arabia from Aqaba. The other side of these mountains is our next stop, Wadi Rum.